at the beginning of the year, when you were breaking down tape of Justin Fields, you were a guy that we wanted to talk to because of the way that you broke down the tape. Like, everyone has an opinion on Justin Fields, but I found you to be harsh when you needed to be, and also giving him praise when you thought he deserved it. So now that you've seen some more tape on Justin Fields, what do you think of him?
Well, I mean, I think he's a very talented young guy that is still learning how to play the position. And I think you say that about a lot of, these quarterbacks that are in their second and third year. And, I think a lot of quarterbacks that, for a big part of their career have relied a lot on athleticism and big arms, while learning how to play the position. And, you see moments that really excite you. And I think when they, cut the field in half, they simplify things, they make it where he's comfortable with what he's seeing, you see everything you want to see in a franchise quarterback. The ability to make those big throws down the field, the confidence to rip the football. On top of that, you see, you guys know there's issues on that team, and you see him make up for some of those issues with his athleticism and the huge plays that he can make with his legs or buying time to get out on the edge. The biggest thing is just, what I say with NFL quarterbacks is that I love all the special stuff that you can bring, but I still believe being a franchise quarterback and being a quarterback that can win in the NFL, you have to make the layups. And what I mean by the layups are, if there's a throw that you're looking at, you got to be able to make that throw consistently. If there's a particular read that to me is a very simple read within the structure of what they're asking you to do, you've got to make the right read most of the time. You've got to be consistent with those things. And that's my biggest thing with Justin at this stage in his career, is he's not consistent with those things, is that I'm not really sure what I'm getting. And there'll be times that he's looking at something and he won't throw it. He hesitates to throw it. And I don't know what that is. Oftentimes what that means is they're not really seeing it. They might be looking in the right area, but they're not really seeing it, because if they saw it, they'd let it go. They throw it because that guy's open. And so that to me is where he's got to continue to get better. And, those things get accentuated when you're on a team that has a lot of issues, right? When, you're not protecting for 5 and 6 seconds and you got to make those decisions faster. Well, then it shows up that, hey, I need to get the ball out right there. When you've got guys that aren't making all the plays for you on the back end or aren't separating, getting great separation, then you got to be on time with your throws. And so I think some of the issues around him accentuate some of the issues that Justin has, where you might be in another situation with some better players around him, and you cover that a little bit as he grows into the position. And so, so I think there's some issues there that Justin has to get better at, but I think also, they need to surround him with better players to help that growth process, be able to work in his favor.
When you say not really seeing it, I find that interesting, because that can mean a lot of things. I know when you burst onto the scene, everyone talked about your eye level in a pass rush always remaining up. And you were 7 steps back there often. And look, we lived through the Mike Martz experience after the league had already adjusted to some of that stuff. and it was no fun, because I know we know famously what Jay Cutler said at halftime about how a quarterback can really get killed back there. But the eyes always being up, even at the last second, right before a hit is being delivered. I'm just concerned with a deterioration of Fields' accuracy, where out of college he was talked about of being just deadly accurate. I know they changed his feet, and I know he's not comfortable, but talk about the relationship of one's eye position with ultimately being accurate or not.
Well, I mean, the eyes are everything. And, again, accuracy, yes, it all plays into it with where your vision. But to me, the eyes are what tell you, what a quarterback is looking at and where he is set up, because, your body and your feet should always follow your eyes. Your eyes and your feet should come together. And so, the first thing is the ability to know where your eyes need to be, on the snap or as you're working through a progression. Like, who am I looking at? So, I was talking to another radio station today, and I think part of our league, because we've got so many incredibly athletic quarterbacks that have, been inserted in college maybe at a earlier stage than maybe they should have been, because we need to get this guy on the field. We need to get this playmaker on the field, and he's really talented. So let's get him out there. So a big part of our league and the college level has been what we call pure progression type plays. And so a pure progression type play means that we're basically telling the quarterback that your read will stay the same no matter what a defense does. You will look at this guy first, and then this guy second, and then this guy third, and this guy fourth, no matter what. And what we've done with that is we've taken out the element of reading defenses. And so no longer are you going to read the flat defender. You're going to look at your guy, and you're going to decide, is your guy open? And then if that guy's not open, then go to your number two and figure out if that guy's open. To me, that hurts a quarterback more than it helps. And on the surface, I understand. It sounds like it helps because it's like, well, I can just plug anybody in, and I can just say, here, go 1, 2, 3, 4, and, just work across. But the hard part of it is, first of all, I'd ask a coach, okay, what's open? Like, explain to me when this guy, what do I need to see to decide that guy's open? And all of us are going to see that differently. Like, what am I going to say as a coach? Like, well, if he's 3 yards from that defender, like, you can't even explain it. So to me, it hurts quarterbacks because they get stuck looking at their guys and trying to decide, is that guy open? And then on top of that, not really seeing the structure of what's behind it to know what's going on. For me, I played the game by, I knew what defender I was looking at. So as soon as that defender, dropped back, I knew I had the underneath throw. As soon as that defender turned his hips this way, I knew I had to throw over the top. So I didn't have to look at my first guy and then my second guy. I was looking at one defender that told me, am I throwing it to my first guy or my second guy? So I'm speeding up the entire process, plus I'm knowing why I'm throwing it to a guy, what a defense is doing in their adjustment to be able to throw it to the open guy. And I think that's part of the problem with a lot of young quarterbacks that have played a lot in college and then they get to the NFL and they're still learning how to play in the pocket, is we think we're making it easier on them and we're making it harder on them because they get stuck looking at one guy a little bit longer, or they get stuck and hesitate on one guy because they're like, is that guy open or not? And then by the time they get to the number two, he's already covered because I missed the window, or there's no real timing to the second guy. And, so to me, the eyes are everything. I want to see a steady head. I want to see eyes that are showing me where they're going, who they're looking at, and then going from there, boom, to either their receiver or to the next defender that they have to read, and doing it in a slow, methodic fashion so you have a sense of what they're doing. And then you talk about dropping your eyes. I mean, I don't care who you are. Once you drop your eyes, it's game over. Once you drop your eyes from what's going on down the field to looking to see if there's a pass rush, it's game over down the field. And now it's just, I'm hoping that you're a better athlete than they are, because you're never going to be able to recover back up to read what's going on and to make a good decision.
Let me follow up on that, if I may, Kurt, because when you talk about the idea of reading a defender, does the fashion of the RPO game, how does that, and the Bears do some of that because they've got a multi-skilled quarterback who should be allowed to make some of those decisions. Do RPO packages allow for some of those decisions based on reading a defender's position where other plays may not?
Well, RPOs are solely based on one guy. So, you are reading a defender without question. And so, if I'm reading a linebacker on an RPO, I get my eyes on him, and as soon as, he steps down or inside to play the run, then we pull it and throw the pass. And so, yes, that is all about, similar to what I'm talking about. Yes, instead of reading from, option 1 to option 2 in the pass game, they're basically saying option 1 is run, and if that defender does this, then go to option 2. But yeah, that's the same idea that I would want in the pass game, is I would want you to look at that same guy, and if that guy steps down, that means I throw it over the top of him. If that guy steps back, then I'm going to throw it up in front of him. And so, yes, reading the same kind of quality idea of, reading a defender and making your decision off of that defender. The problem with RPOs for me is that they're really hard technically for quarterbacks because your feet, if you guys just envision, I've got a run fake that I'm running to the left-hand side. So my feet are parallel to the line of scrimmage. I've got to read a defender, and then once I've read that defender, somehow I've got to try to get my feet turned completely perpendicular and maybe even more so back to hit a slant on the outside. So too often it lends itself to bad quarterback technique because I can never get my feet connected to the throw because they happen too fast within an RPO structure. And so that's another thing that you see is the premise of RPOs are really, really good. But, you have to be really, really good technically to be able to be consistent with making the kinds of throws that you're asked to make. And, and that lends itself to, again, inefficiencies in the RPO game. And so I'm a guy that likes RPOs that are based solely off of pre-snap read. So now I'm not, instead of looking at that linebacker and whether that linebacker moves after the snap, I'm simply looking at where that linebacker is before the snap. If he's tucked into the box, boom, I'm throwing it outside. If he's outside the box, then I'm handing it off and I'm going to force him inside the box instead of having to read him and adjust after the snap. So there's, different levels to all of this stuff. But your basic premise is, yes, in an RPO, you're reading a defender. And I would want to, and I do the same thing when I'm teaching how to play in the pass game. I want you to read a defender, and that defender does one thing. That means he can't cover the other. And that's, to me, how you play the quarterback position so you can play it fast, you can get through your progressions, and you can make quality decisions.
This is the type of analysis that you're going to get on the Westwood One broadcast of the Bears game tonight. Kurt Warner is our guest. My fear is what you've been talking about. And look, I love having you on the radio, but there's a part of me that's like, I need Kurt to have a conversation with Justin. And because of what you're talking about, where I imagine that Justin is like, I'm doing everything that they're asking me to do without the nuance of having like an OG there explaining if they're doing pure progression stuff and he needs to learn how to read defenses, how can he do both at the same time?
Well, I mean, it's hard. I've had some, quarterbacks that I've coached in high school, and I teach them how to play, or I teach them, by reading defenders. I've had some of those quarterbacks go on to play, in college systems that are more pure progression. And so it's hard because I understand what the coaches are telling them. They have to look at this guy first and this guy second. And I tell them oftentimes, based on the play design, what's probably going to be open and what's probably not going to be open. So even if you have to look at 1 and 2, come out and know what you're looking at with 1 and 2. And you might have to get to 3 much faster than somebody normally would within a pure progression. So you have to play that way within a pure progression. But again, that's a guy that's been taught how to the other way. The bottom line is what I believe is that every quarterback, and specifically when you become a franchise quarterback, you have to take ownership of your own system and say, Coach, this is what and you got to know what you do well. And you got to say, Coach, I don't see this the right way. Like, this doesn't make sense to me. I'm not going to succeed in this. This is how I see the game. All of us quarterbacks see the game a particular way. I use this analogy all the time that, I was in the West Coast system for a minute. And I didn't like the West Coast system because the West Coast system didn't play to the way I saw the game. I was a guy that saw the game top down. I wanted to make the big play and then work to the check down. And that's how I played. And that was where my strengths were, was throwing the ball down the field. So you could pull out, a play that Joe Montana, made famous and, put 3 Hall of Fame quarterbacks up and put this play on the board. And Joe Montana will say, man, I love that play. Like, call it, every snap and I'll make it work. Another guy might go, yeah, it's okay. I can make it work. And then I'll look at it and go, I hate that play. Don't call that play ever for me. And people will look at it and go, how's that possible? 3 really good quarterbacks, and they see it completely differently because we all see the game. We process the game. The way, a play design makes sense in our head is different for all of us. So we've got to design our offenses if we're coordinators. We got to understand, what does my guy do well? And that doesn't mean that, a pure progression system may not be the best thing for some guys, because they can't see and understand, what I'm talking about and know exactly with the speed of the game where to get their eyes right off the bat. So pure progression might be best for some guys. I just think you're always going to be limited in that system based on how I see the game. But a guy like Justin has to be able to go in and help develop this offense around what he sees and what his skill set is and what he thinks he can be successful at. And, coaches the same way. You want every coach to come in and not just say, hey, this is my playbook, but say, hey, Justin, hey, Kurt, what do you like? What do you see? How does this make sense to you? Okay, if I give you this play, what are you thinking if you're going against, watch some film. If we're going against this look right here, what are you thinking? Talk me through it. And it's those kinds of things that make great players great and allow systems to work in the favor of their teams and their quarterbacks because it's being designed around what this guy does well. I had a conversation with somebody the other day going, Tom Brady is a system quarterback. And I'm a believer that every quarterback is a system quarterback, because every quarterback sees the game a particular way. Now, some people have a great skill set that they can make up for things because they've got a great skill set. But ultimately, we all play best within our system, within, our viewpoint of how the game is played and having an offense that is designed around that. That is the key to me in every situation with every franchise quarterback is that guy's got to go in and take ownership and say, this doesn't work for me. This doesn't make sense to me. I need plays that do this. And you've got to know what that is. I think that's one of the hard things is, I tell young quarterbacks that I work with is you've got to realistically step back and go, this is what I'm capable of doing. Because if you don't and you try to be everything, like if I went out there every day and said, well, I think I can do everything. I'm going to try to be Patrick Mahomes. I'm going to get lost in the wash because I'm not Patrick Mahomes. I can't do some of the things physically that he can do. So I need to make sure I go, well, eliminate that stuff because that stuff I can't do. But here's what I'm really, really good at. Let's build around this because now I can be successful because now I see it, I get it, I'm playing to my strengths, and boom, now I can play to my highest potential. And that becomes a big part of it. And it's 100% harder when you're a young guy trying to make it, and, it's hard to take full ownership of it. But these guys have to. You have to. Ball is in your hands. You're out there. You're the one that everybody's looking at. Everybody's going to – you got to make sure you're putting yourself in position to succeed, and the coaches have to be continually trying to help you to do that by everybody understanding the strengths and how we play to that within our offense.
Kurt, this was quite the education. We really, really appreciate you going down to a granular level to help us understand it. And if you get down on the field tonight, please have a conversation with Justin because I think he could use it right now. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great call with my favorite play-by-play guy, Kevin Harlan, tonight.
You got it. Kevin is awesome. But, hey, anybody that hears this, and I tell every quarterback that I come across, my door is always open. It's easy. I am always happy to help anybody in any way that they think I possibly can. And so even if this gets back to Justin or any other young, player out there or whatever, I love helping. I love teaching the game. So I'm always available from that standpoint.